knowledge of the current plant, so it's probably a bit hard to answer that. But I suppose if you look at one of those slides I put up, the trends of what others are doing, that would give you a pretty good steer on what the likely direction would be, put it that way.
I was only there for 45 minutes yesterday, but I would say that that step one is to figure out what are the discharge requirements really going to be, right? So it's hard to make a judgment on what needs to be built until we know what the effluent quality or what the treated water needs to look like at the end. That there's a good bit of useful infrastructure there right now that can be taken advantage of. Clearly something will be done, but yeah, I mean, we always start with what are the waste characteristics, what does the end product need to be, and then we fill in the middle.
And what would that look like maybe in a New Zealand or Australia context? Do we actually chase a total mass per annum, or are we just worried about the concentration?
It tends to be a bit of both. There are a number of consents I'm aware of around New Zealand that are mass-based, and there are a number that are concentration-based. It's really for different reasons. A lot of the concentrations are to do with toxicity in the environment, et cetera, whereas the long-term masses are to do with the long-term and the overall effect of those nutrients in a catchment.
There's also a communication issue. When Kevin and I are discussing performance of a plant with each other, we would conveniently discuss that in concentration units. Often the effect on the environment, though, is a mass per time based unit, and mass per time doesn't allow us to communicate what really is going on at this treatment plant. So, quite some years ago, EPA set up a program within our air regulation called cap and trade, and they suggested that you industries in the Midwest are subject to X tons per year of sulfur dioxide emissions, and we're going to cap it, and you go figure out how to create a market-based system to trade and figure out where those removals are going to come from. And so that now is being applied to water. Water's a little slower and a little more complicated to do this and a little less regional. But in the Chesapeake Bay program, EPA set requirements for total mass of nitrogen and phosphorus that could come out of the whole of the James River. That includes 7 of our treatment plants, and it includes a whole lot of other municipal treatment plants and industries all discharging to the river. And so within the state, a trading program was set up that allows different municipalities to trade with each other, and that includes the industries. So the industries and municipalities are part of a trading program that was set up as a corporation where we can buy and sell credits, so that we might decide that instead of spending X millions of dollars to upgrade a treatment plant, it's less expensive for us in the short term to go buy credit from somebody else that's doing better than they need to be doing. So that's how it works in a gross sense. On top of that, our utility also has, as I showed the example, 7 plants that were tied together and given a single mass load allocation. Within a given utility or within a given municipality, that's also possible and not done as commonly, but it's becoming a little more common. And so those 7 treatment plants have a mass load allocation of nitrogen and phosphorus, but the individual treatment plants still have to meet pH 6 to 9, 30 milligram per liter BOD, 30 milligram per liter TSS, sometimes more special criteria based on where that plant discharges. They have to meet specific requirements for whole effluent toxicity. So the individual plant does still have individual treatment plant limits, but nitrogen and phosphorus are handled on an aggregate basis. Now the other interesting thing that is pretty lucrative little business in this boutique fertilizer market, selling a fertilizer that costs a lot more than what it would cost to go out and buy phosphorus fertilizers on a large scale. And so my understanding is it goes to things that need a slow release fertilizer. So this is turf grass associated with golf courses. It's potted plants, you know, that you have hanging in your house for years at a time, and you need something that's there as a fertilizer that will last a long time. So nurseries and this kind of thing is my understanding of where it's going. But we actually don't even we don't get that information because it's part of their confidential business.
Although maybe something to add to that, one of the key things on something like reusing struvite or other value products from your treatment plant is to ensure you've got certainty of a market. So having your supplier tied up with a guaranteed buy is a massive step ahead. Because you can do all this stuff, if no one buys it or no one wants it, then you'll close it down pretty quick.
Okay, we've got a question.
Hello, those upgrades. What sort of payback period are you looking at when you mentioned the business cases? So what sort of payback are you targeting with these upgrades, and who's paying for those upgrades? Thank you.
So when it's a regulatory driven upgrade, you know, there's not really a business case. It's just which is less expensive from a business case. If it's an optional project that's really being done with the option to save money, like Astera compared to chemical treatment of the side stream, then you know it's nice to have some payback. Now this Astera project was pretty small, so capital, you know, it doesn't cut too much into our capital plan. So, you know, but generally we're looking for, you know, something less than 10 years for a payback. We can handle, because of our, you know, assets are designed for such a long lifespan, we can handle a little longer payback period than say a private industry might be willing to take on. But yeah, I mean, less than 10 years is where it needs to be generally for us. The place this is coming from is, you know, our rates are going up. In the U.S., water and wastewater rates were sort of maintained artificially low through a result of the federal government spending a lot of money in the 70s and 80s in the construction grants programs following the implementation of the Clean Water Act and the Safe Drinking Water Act, and a lot of federal grant money built a lot of infrastructure, and a lot of public utilities sat on that infrastructure and didn't maintain it and didn't keep rates moving up sufficiently with inflation to renew that infrastructure. And so you know, in a lot of respects, we're now in catch-up mode and getting the rates really to where they should have been, you know, quite some years ago.
It was really enlightening to get a good understanding that each plant has to be seen in its context, the context of what you're trying to achieve, the context of its location. Is it a big population, is it a small population, what kind of soil conditions, climate, and you have. So that I think means we really have to be smart upfront what we think about, and I leave that to the experts. But the other thing that I find really interesting was you're talking about what can be done before, and you, Charles, mentioned it too. If you could get rid of one thing, it's the food waste grinder. So is there some research on how to change consumer behavior, change potential inputs that go into these waste plants, and what can we as citizens do to actually contribute to make it easier on the plants, reducing phosphorus and other things, so that there is an alternative? And the third question that I would have is micro-treatment on site. Where is that going? I believe there is some development in that space, and how does it compete with large plants, or is it more for the small places? And we'll hear more about it this afternoon.
One of them we can defer to Professor Rubin. He's going to talk about that. So what we're going to cut one out. That's okay.
I suppose one question I'll answer slightly differently is there's a massive treatment plant being built, being designed at the moment in Singapore, and what they're doing is they're using food waste, not through garbage grinders, but in a different way to to generate energy. And so they're bringing together solid waste and the wastewater and combining the two plants to make sure that they're energy self-sufficient and actually exporting. So while garbage grinders for traditional plants are not good news, if you're some of this new technology where you try and pull out all the carbon at the start, maybe they're not such a bad thing. Because if you can use that energy that's in there and to do something useful with it, then maybe not so bad.
But generally, it would be better to take the food waste and put it in a separate container and bring it to the treatment plant and put it in the anaerobic digester where it should go, right? I mean, I think that as a rule, that's what a lot of communities are headed towards, yeah. That was two of the water and wastewater service is often the tool by which planning is done, and I'm not convinced that's a good thing, meaning that the tool by which development is allowed or not allowed is water and wastewater service. And I think that the experience generally is that it's better to have good planning and decide where we want development and provide water and wastewater services as needed, instead of using the presence of water and wastewater service in order to allow or disallow development to occur. But yeah, that's a